There. And I didn't go. And then she's like,
Yes.
and then the girls looked and Coach John and I,
So actually,
they were back and forth. Then the girl, Destiny, is that her name? What the
Debbie?
Debbie, there you go, the daughter. I was like, well, Timmy, can I ask you, is that right? She was like, yeah, you're the one that's softball. Debbie played softball too.
Yes, you did.
Yes. So I'm like, so that's what started the whole thing. But by the time we might have had already, those were like temporary.
Yes, yes, you've been talking, I know.
It's nice.
It is. But it's weird. It's pretty tasty.
It is good, yes, very good.
Good.
I know where that is all falling out.
I would have been that's what we made 2 days and weeks for. Like, the way we came in is that we were going out. I stopped doing that.
It's great. Something
I was following the ones that had everything for the I said, with the short. Every day, I'll wait until.
Nice to see you. Whatever you want. Very good.
Yeah.
I guess I get to see you again.
Here's our holiday. Yes, we do. Hi, how are you?
Good call, I came.
Kevin, Mr. Bouquet, how
How
was
was
your
your holiday?
holiday?
That was good.
Thank you for
See you
How
back
are you?
home.
Thank you. Was it good?
Yeah, no, we were spending time touring around with TGA.
Better you than me. That's the good thing about it. Good. Yes, sir, it did.
Big guns came out too. Personally, I just got turned up.
It was beautiful, I was down there. Yes.
Crowded.
Many people, though, and I got to see them. There wasn't, I think it's
Hey, how you doing? I know this one's not really off guard. She's probably doing a lot of.
And we have a friend who literally lives like a block over, and his backyard faces the tower. It was seriously just there watching most of our restaurant.
You have to be. Personally.
You lose your USB drive?
I'm not using it. I gave it to the first patient.
Oh.
Okay.
She gave, and I gave her.
Did it start too late?
I needed it.
No.
Good.
And she returned it.
There she is.
Where you live?
So
She started looking for me.
we're gonna have to fire her.
Stick with mine.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to our first 2020 school board meeting. Thank you for being here. The meeting of the South San Antonio, the special call meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District Board of Trustees will come to order. Today is January 9th, 2020, and the time is 6 p.m. At this time, Michelle, could we have roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Stacy Alderete. Present. Gilbert Rodriguez. Connie Prado.
Present.
Shirley Ibarra Peña. Homer Flores. Kevin Rasco.
Present.
Veronica Barba.
Present.
Thank you, Michelle. At this time, could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, the Texas flag, our prayer, and our call to action? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Please bow your head in prayer. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this business reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions, and help us to build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best that we can be. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Call to action.
All
students enjoy successful education experiences, empowering them to make decisions while enriching their lives in the future they create.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, the citizens to be heard. It's my understanding there are no citizens signed up at this time. So the next item on the agenda is our superintendent's report. Ms. Sendejo.
Good evening, everyone. Great to see some familiar faces. It's great to be here. Mrs. Brado, members of the board, thank you for being here this evening in our special call meeting. We've had a great start this week already. Had some opportunities to visit campuses, administrators, as well as looking very closely at our academics as we begin to prepare for our benchmark round. But great to be here again, and looking forward to dialogue and discussion here.
Thank you, Ms. Sendejo. Okay, moving on. Our first item on the agenda is the presentation reports. And the first one is an oral report by the superintendent to clarify the board policy FBB local, Academy of Choice, selection and campus designated attendance, intra-open enrollment. Ms. Sendejo.
Thank you, Mrs. Prado. As we have it listed, Michelle, are we going to place it up there?
Yes.
It's a pretty short one pager. She is. Thank you, Ms. Logan. Welcome, Mr. Rodriguez.
Good.
Did we
No,
thumbs up or thumbs down?
no, I think I'm going to fix it.
Sorry to hear. Thank you. As we begin having conversations, hoping just to clarify any questions that any of the members of the board may have as we begin what we consider to be just a positive wave of public relations when it comes to getting ready for our enrollment coming in February. February 3rd opens our window for registration for 2020-2021. And we are excited. It has moved our cheese a little bit, I will tell you. But just overall, the buzz of getting ready to prepare for registration, ensuring that as we begin our process for aligning our 2020-2021 budget and pathways and coursework that we are providing, whether it's our elementaries, our academies, our zone students in the middle school, and of course our high schools, both West Campus and South San. We want to just really just give you an opportunity to ask or clarify, be able to clarify for you any particular questions you may have, because of the fact that there is some additional choice that we know about now when it comes to our high schools. And as we know, and you see it up there, when we review FD, be local, a student shall be assigned to a school in attendance area which he or she resides. What we want to ensure that our community, our parents are understanding is that, of course, that we are zoned and our students are feeder patterns to certain middle schools and obviously our high schools. As we begin preparing for West Campus High School as well as South San High School, we have specific feeder patterns that are in place for both high schools. And that is something that we're really now having to embrace, own as a community, as a district, because of our West Campus High School reopening. And so we're excited about that. When you take a peek there, class changes, and just want to read it to you there, the campus principal shall be authorized to investigate and approve the transfer of a student from one class room to another on that campus, which then is where we have the specificity with transferring between schools. That has been an opportunity for our students, for all students within our district bounds. What we have had conversations about is how and what will that impact be for both of our high schools as we're creating both early college pathways, the submittal for our P-TECH Academy, and choice. At this time, I would like to share, and we're fully aware that when we consider, for example, our students from Shepherd Middle School and the feeder to West Campus, what opportunities can we afford our students here, what transportation options do we have, however still committing to being West Campus students. And that is something that we will field many of questions as we begin the process of presentations to our students, presentations to our parents, showcasing both campuses as well. The specificity behind this, and I'll read it, the superintendent shall be authorized to investigate and approve transfers between schools. And that is just to ensure that the reasons and why we are validating or potentially approving a transfer is justifiable to the need of a student and the particular choice that the student is making. When you open, and just previous experience of opening campus, especially at the high school level, obviously you want to have as much as possible with football games and pep rallies and just having the opportunity for some positive learning spaces for our students. So we want to ensure that all of that is in place when our students are provided the opportunity to come and visit West Campus High School and South San High School. So just for the board's interest and time to just reflect and have an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have when it comes to the clarity behind it, because there are times that you may be in a place where you're having to maybe answer some questions for parents because you attended a soccer game prior to the board meeting or our basketball game tomorrow night as well. And it happens because we are out and about, and we thank you for each of you taking that opportunity to have those conversations and of course shifting them over to the district. At this time, I'd like to, if there's anyone that has any particular questions when it comes to the transfer of policy that we currently have in place, we gladly answer those for you.
Board members, before I ask if there's any questions for Ms. Sendeca on this particular item, if you would please have questions for her, not only do you voice them, if you raise your hand and acknowledge it, because of the situation, the setting, it's hard for me to look over and see. So if you want to ask a question, if you don't mind, just raise your hand and say, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask a question, so I can acknowledge you correctly. So with that being said, I'll proceed. Anyone have questions for Ms. Alejo or comments? Anybody here? On the policy? None? Okay, all right. Mr. Roscoe.
Thank you. So with your ability to approve transfers for students, I assume that you'll have some internal policies for equities that you can follow consistently for the different situations when students request transfers?
Thank you, Mr. Roscoe. Excellent. Good. Yes, sir, absolutely. And we do. We have two in particular that we currently ensure that are a part of the process, and that's the attendance of the student as well as the discipline, unfortunate infractions of the student record of a student. Those, and just to ensure that when a transfer is approved, it is in the best interest of one, the student, and the communication between the parent and maybe perhaps the receiving campus within the district that would be considered. So yes, sir, there are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roscoe. Anyone else have any questions?
If I may, Madam President.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez.
I just want to say that I'm glad that we're getting clarity from the superintendent on the transfer policies and how we're going to pursue those, and that we're going to put a plan together to communicate to the students and to the community members on how what approach we're taking, right? So I just want to be clear that because we heard it a lot at the beginning last year, that we're not offering kids choice, that we're not, quite the contrary. It's not about assigning a student to a specific campus. It's making the program that's that we have available to them. So we're making every program, no matter what campus they're attending, available to them, and the experts are going to make sure that we accommodate them and that they're able to participate in those programs. So I just want to be clear that I personally want to steer away from, well, you're making them go to that campus and you're making them go to that campus. No, what programs do you want to participate in? And we're going to make sure that you get there, because every student's going to be afforded the same opportunity.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Rodriguez. And this past month in December, we really had the opportunity to connect and collaborate with Southwest Independent School District, Harlandale Independent School District, because they have some similar processes already currently in place. And I will tell you, again, they embrace that opportunity for us to come and visit and ask questions to see what would be best that could fit us. And of course, the logistical square mileage within our district as well. Alongside that, we've had many of meetings within our teams and departments to ensure that the pathways are in place, and we're able to create those transportation opportunities as well to get our students to and from, if that were the case. Now, the other positive is, due to the fact that our registration process is happening so much earlier than the past, at least speaking for last year for us, will allow us to access numbers so much sooner to ensure that what we're putting in place is in the best interest of our students, and being able to share with you the data of choice from our students. And if we're in a place where this can be afforded at both sites because of the numbers and the interest, that is definitely a win-win. And that is something, again, that we were able to receive information from both of our districts that are nearby us. So again, thank you for your comment there, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Ms. Alejo. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. If there are no other comments, then we'll move on to the next item. Before we go into the business at hand, I'd like to read the board meeting rules of decorum according to BED Local. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience or individual board members. If after at least one warning from the presiding officer, any person continues to disrupt the meeting by his or her words or actions, the presiding officer may request assistance from law enforcement officials to have the person removed from the meeting. Applause, outbursts, or demonstrations by any spectator will not be permitted during the course of a meeting. Everyone will take a seat. There will be no standing. Signs are not allowed during the proceedings. At no time during a board meeting, whether a regular or special call meeting, and whether in open or closed session, shall a board member use his or her cell phone or engage in texting. The use of phones or texting demonstrates a lack of respect for the proceeding and may, under certain circumstances, even be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Board members will refrain from private discussions during any board meeting, whether in open or closed session. In the event of an emergency, board members will excuse themselves from the meeting to address the emergency. Board members, let me just remind you that please, if you would raise your hand to be recognized so that we can recognize you before you speak on any agenda item. There will be no interruption when a board member is speaking. That concludes my remarks on the decorum, and I thank my board members for abiding by the decorum, the rules that have been presented here tonight. Therefore, we'll move on to our discussion and possible action items. Let me just say something. The first 4 items that are coming to us tonight are actually follow-up items from the December 18th meeting. As you recall, we had a presentation by Garza Bamberger, Jorge, on the Olivares campus and the West Campus also. And we decided at that time, since it was just a presentation, there was no action, that it needed to come back for action. So the first 4 items are action items because they're follow-up items. Item number 1 is discussion and possible board action to approve Phase 2 modifications to Olivares Administrative Building. Ms. Sendejo.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Prado. Took the words right out of my mouth. You're correct. We did have multiple presentations last month, and we're following up. I do want to personally thank the members of the board that had an opportunity to visit our sites as well. We're hoping that that provided some type of additional reflection and opportunity to ask those questions that were still lingering based on some of the numbers that are tied to these phases. At this time, we do have Mr. Davis, Mr. Jorge, thank you for being here, and of course, Mr. Doucette, and I appreciate you as well visiting with us these last couple of days in regards to this. Mr. Longman, I see West Campus, and we should be projecting Olivares.
Is the Olivares stuff in this packet? So do you have the Olivares version of this packet?
From last month's.
From last one.
Mr. Longman, he projected from there?
Yes.
I still have more comments.
We should.
Apologize for that.
Thank you, Mr. Longman. Just a brief transition as we will project the PowerPoint from last month for Olivares. This time there are no changes on there specifically, just based on dialogues. Are we good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Just trying to get my bearings and
Yes.
recollect it was quite a long break and
Well, and just thoughts on this end for our board of trustees. having to go back and review every part of the presentation. We're open to that, or to clarify any additional questions that you may have had if you had the opportunity to visit the site as well. So either or. Do you want to?
Let's go ahead and do the presentation.
sure.
I will do the, well, okay, I can talk about, Oliva, just to refresh your mind.
It's actually, the only one is from last night? It's on board.
Yes, that's.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
up top. And just to refresh everybody's memory, we conduct a series of inspections on the building based on ADA issues. If you recollect, we were making just finishes on that building, and when I discovered that the contractor was actually making some demolitions, that requires the city to know. So I went ahead and talked to the city of San Antonio and submitted plans for permit, which it was granted. We create life safety plans where we discover a series of other items that we presented here, like the building was not sprinkled, and it was too expensive to bring the building up to code and sprinkler. So the city was agreed that if we just make the boardroom capacity only for 49 people, they can allow the permit. And that's what we did. We need to place the signs on the capacity of that room. And we discovered also at that moment that there were several ADA issues that we addressed in the documents. However, there were some that were very in the borderline, that probably it could be okay, it could be not. Before we finished this and found with RAS, which is the Registered Accessibility Specialist, is an inspector, and we discovered that it was not in compliance, and bring back the contractor, which is sometimes a little bit more difficult. We went ahead and we conduct another inspection with the inspector. It was a courtesy for us. The inspector has a good relationship with us, and he agreed to come and visit the site. And he pointed out several of what we thought may be not in compliance. And that's when we issue a series of documents to the contractor to give us a price to make these items not in compliance and make it correct. So that's when we send those, and the numbers are what you receive. Remember the staff, the South San staff is in control of the contract. So everything, every price is received by them. In any case, if they need any advice on any price, we are open to analyze the price and give our recommendation on that price. And that's what you submitted to the board for approval.
That's actually item 2.
That's right. So that's what we did, and I visited the site during the Christmas break, the last days of the Christmas break. Unfortunately, it was locked. Nobody was working there, but I saw that it was advance in the work, and contractor was fulfill the contract. So now we are closer to the date that he promised the campus to be finished, which is going to be around mid-March. So I think it's doable, and the status of the work is right there.
So, again, I apologize, wasn't prepared for this portion. Thought it was going to be different, but I'll answer any questions related to the phase 2 modifications that I can. I do have a full-size set of paper drawings. We did not digitize those and place them on the agenda, obviously, so I'll answer questions as best I can.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Thank you, Jorge. Board members, are there any questions for either Jorge or Mr. Doucette at this time on this particular item? Yes, I'm sorry, Salvador.
Madam President, Mrs. Sandejo, is there a way that we can, I meant to email you last time, my little one got sick, so, but is there a way that we can get photographs? Because I know in many of presentations, we usually get photographs of the building, actually the before, during, and then after. Is there a way that the entire board can get emailed some photographs of the building? Absolutely, Mrs. Sandejo, we can get that done. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions at this time? No? Okay. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. So, board members, this is an action item. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Let me get a little more information on the table before you take action.
Okay.
This project was originally led as a job order contract.
Yes.
And it was, the original amount was $350,000. Which did not require board approval under state law and under your policy. That was delegated. With the extension in these, the excess, it will be more than $500,000. So we need board approval. The board, the staff can execute the contract, but we need board approval for the amount. So do you have cost data? And I need a recommendation out of the architect that this is the way to proceed. Job order contracts are put in law for purposes of renovation, remodeling, on short terms. Basically, the contractor bids a unit price for things and then quotes a discount, which then is computed item by item and led to the bill. So we should be able to be pretty close with respect to this about what the cost is. There's always little things in terms of that come up, change orders and whatnot. But do we have a cost estimate in terms of this now so the board knows what they're being asked to authorize?
And yes, sir, I do believe that was the discussion there. There is technically no, actually it's number 2 that has that listed and we're ready for that as well. So we want to have that presentation at this time.
So you need a recommendation from the architect.
Okay, but I didn't need a recommendation from the architect that, with respect to these repairs and the method of contract.
What is it, if I may, Mr. O'Hanlon, what exactly is it that you're looking for? What is it that we need? The presentation has been made as to what is needed. Are you just looking for the cost now, for the amendments that are being made?
Well, one recommendation for the architect to approve the construction. 2, to approve the method of contracting. That they recommend that this is the most efficient way of proceeding to the board for you taking action. And then give us some information with respect to the cost so that you know what you're being asked to spend.
Okay. What we recommend is we have confidence in your staff. They have demonstrated full knowledge during all these time with the contractor, how to handle the contractor, approving all the change orders. So I'm fully confident of your staff and whenever they approve it, I'm sure it is okay.
Mr. O'Hanlon, does that satisfy your question?
Contractors who?
Yes, sir.
Who's the contractors? So I can get it on the record.
It's LMC.
All right.
We incorporated, it's LMC.
And what is the current, with the change order, what's the estimate of total contract amount going to be?
Actually, $685,000 is what's being presented.
That's the total, including the original 300, or is that the new 685? Since I tried to be clear.
Yes or no, that's the new total. So we want to call it phase one was completed at $256,000. Phase two is the $685,000 applications.
Okay.
Mr. Howland, I think if you look at the backup for item number 2, if you don't have that on the item number 2, the action item,
Is number 2.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
which is actually the job order contract, it also has who the contractor is and the amount.
Yes, that's fine. I just wanted to get, well, if they were going to sit down, I just wanted to make sure that they
Well, and just for
got put on
clarification,
the spot.
just for clarification, as far as the motion and taking a vote, it would be based on action item 2.
Right, I think
Which-
what we're approving on the first one is just the modification, what's being presented as modification. And item number 2 is to approve the contract to do the modification. Am I reading that correctly?
And all I was trying to do is before you got to approve before you approve the plans that do the upgrades, that you had some kind of idea about what the cost was, that we put that up there.
Yeah.
So you're not buying a pig in the public.
So, but before I ask for a motion again, I do need to ask our superintendent, what is your recommendation, Mr. Demo?
Mrs. Prado, we have been working closely with Mr. Jorge Garza-Baumberger, our staff as well, very closely with committees and having much dialogue in order for us to meet the transitional deadline. I recommend that we approve the next phase for Olivares to include the phase 2 modifications.
And I think Mrs. Alderete, you wanted to say something?
No, I think that's.
Anyone else have any questions before I ask for a motion? Okay, therefore, do I hear a motion on this item? If you'll raise your hand, please, and then state your motion. Mr. Rodriguez?
I move to approve.
Mr. Rodriguez moves to approve. Is there a second? Anybody? Mr. Roscoe?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 2. Discussion and possible board action to approve job order contract for Phase 2 of Olivares Administrative Building modifications pursuant to Chapter 2269, Subchapter 1 of Texas Government Code. Ms. Sendejo.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Prado. And again, just for clarity, this is where you have the current backup and the specificity behind what specifically has been changed on the job order contract with the construction and maintenance company. So at this time, I do believe I see Mr. Giuseppe. Game on here. Giuseppe?
Thank you. As you know, the backup for this item is the job order contract. As I stated, we do have paper copies of the modifications to the building. I'd be happy to show those. These are not construction drawings that we have that would be submitted to the city. These are just the renovations for us to use as a planning tool. The phase 2 modifications right now are totaling $683,000 and $384.83 for the phase 2 modifications. This will include enhancing some office space, removing some non-compliance issues with ADA, getting the entire building back up to ADA standards within the facility. There is still some outside work in reference to the slope of the entrance into the building that will need to be worked. We're still waiting on information on that. This will replace handrails in the areas that need to be adjusted. This will also bring the restrooms into compliance with ADA accessibility. So again, the total is $683,384.83 at this point, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Doucette on this item? No? Okay, thank you then. Ms. Sendejo, what is your
Yes,
recommendation?
ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Prado. At this time, I recommend that we approve the job order contract for Phase 2 of Olivares Administration Building with modifications.
All right, I have a recommendation by Ms. Sendejo's board members. Do I hear a motion? Anyone?
Move to approve.
Mr. Rodriguez has made a motion. Do I hear a second? And Ms. Alderete has seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion and possible board action to direct architect concerning Phase 2 building improvements for West Campus High School. Ms. Sendejo.
Thank you, Mrs. Prado. And as we are again transitioning over our central office from this current site, there are the next phases that will be presented here in the near future alongside this evening in regards to our West Campus High School renovations. So we ask that you take the time to embrace and really ask any questions specifically to what you will see. I believe we are sharing what we would say a Cadillac opportunity here. So again, ensuring that we have all the learning spaces and the potential resources available for our students as we transition this particular building physically that we're currently in to reflect the best learning environment for our students at West Campus High School. And for that, we do have Mr. Jorge and Mr. Doucette, and we welcome any questions as soon as the presentation is over.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Since the deadline for Olivares is approaching and the move of the staff is imminent, we've been received a phone call from the staff that we need to prepare for Phase 2 of West Campus. So, I have in this presentation two options. The option A, which is the first page on your pack, it will tell you the area that we can develop right away. It's around 17,000 square feet. It's all that bluish shaded area where we are going to place some partitions to make areas for classrooms. Now, this is not new. We presented this before. This is the fastest way. This is the fastest way to produce learning areas in this level, this floor level. The number one is it will be the library, what we call collaborative areas, which is library, the career planning, and all the offices, existing offices will work perfectly for those areas as well. In the area that we are marking with number 3, those are the areas that we may attack to create new classrooms. These partitions cannot go all the way up to the ceiling because air conditioning things that we need to correct before, and it will be more expensive, and it cannot be permanent at this time. So because of that, and we are showing there what are exactly the construction area. Because of that, we explore option B, which we think, in our opinion, is the most recommendable way to proceed. In the first floor, or basement, whatever you want to call, the area is totally open. So it's easier for a contractor to come inside and create these learning spaces in that area. Demolition is very, very minimum, We have to modify air conditioning ducts. We have to explore if air conditioning is, the capacity is enough, but if not, it's really something that we need to address. Lighting is another issue, and technology. But in the next page, right there, you can see how many classrooms we can provide in the first floor. Since this is just a master plan, it's not that we recommend that you build all these levels, and we know that the constrictions of the budget may prohibit to do this extent of work. Also, there are some areas that needs to be occupied by the staff, and since they cannot move everybody to Olivares at this point because they don't have the space in there. So I went ahead and asked Mr. Becerra, what areas you need? And we marked it in red. The classrooms that are marked 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and the area 23 are required by your staff to continue in working in these areas. So that is going to be for food, services, and warehouse. The top left corner will continue as a transportation to be there. So potentially you can create 10 classrooms, and it depends on the budget again. Those are the classrooms that are marked 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Classrooms marked as 1, 2, and 3 are currently as a classroom. They're being used currently as a classroom. The number 22 on the left lower corner, that will be the locker area, as well as the 21. We received recommendations from Ms. Sendejo that the gym area needs to be bring again as a gym. So we can install a new scoreboard, new hoops, and put a new flooring system in there to create a complete gym. You can divide the existing bleachers in-house and visitors. It can be divided physically or just with a line. But in the future, if it is required, we can analyze and do some bleachers in the opposite side, as it was before. Then we have a transportation which is going to occupy the upper left corner. Same in the phase 2, the space number 1 will be again your library and your career planning area. The principal's office and the attendance and all that is already created over there. You don't have to do any change to the office at this point. We believe that this master plan for phase 2 will work perfectly for what is needed in the near future for West Campus. You still need to take in consideration phase 3 in the future to fulfill, probably will be the last phase, to bring this campus up to high school, a full high school program. But in the future, we can analyze with the principal, with Ms. Sendejo, what programs are needed to create those spaces for them. Of course, you still have the building across, which is the science building, and you don't have to create those science buildings, science classrooms in this side of the And that will conclude this.
Okay, board members, are there any questions for Jorge or Mr. Doucette on this particular item?
Actually,
Mr. Rodriguez?
thank you for that. Thank you for the detailed presentation, Jorge and Mr. Doucette. So I'm looking at the plan here. If we can go over the cafeteria plan, so I see here, option B, master plan, where we have red, and it says area to be used as cafeteria, future renovation. So future renovation meaning a potential phase 3 at some point.
That's correct.
So-
It's one of the areas that is very expensive to
Right.
to renovate. We can create.
Unless you want to do it for free.
But we can create the space for tables. The most expensive item in there is the quick kitchen equipment.
Right. So with the existing cafe play, would we use that for the, like we are for the school year for the,
We will need to make a more deeper analysis on how many shifts you need to fulfill the needs for the students.
Right.
Because it depends on the number of students.
Right.
And you can have 1 shift, 2 shifts, 3 shifts.
So would the plan continue to be the way it is this school year? Make the food.
For 2020, 21, yes, sir. And again, this is just finding the balance and being cost effective with funding. So still provide the maximal learning spaces and really focus as we are considering the competition gymnasium as well. So it's give or take where we do have something that currently functions, and yes, it would potentially take multiple lunch periods. We talked about some lunch open spaces, outdoor, so other ways to ensure that our students are not just in that one particular area as well, but really truly being cost effective for this next academic school year. So yes, Mr. Rodriguez, that's
Okay,
correct.
no, I completely agree, and I totally understand we want to do this responsibly, right, from a fiscal perspective. When do we anticipate those decisions to be made as far as the cafeteria and how we're going to do that?
Well, we are working with your staff, so
Right.
as soon as we receive instructions, we are open to continue.
Okay.
And Mr. Rodriguez, just in our phase, as we are introducing this to you, giving you the opportunity to ask questions or seek additional clarifying questions at a later time, allows for us to work with Mr. Jorge and the team to ensure all of those numbers and itemized costs are presented before us and make the best decisions based on what we can afford, one, and ensuring, yes, that we are taking the best win for our students as we begin the next school year. Comfortably, when we look at the numbers and the number of classrooms that we currently show in phase 2, option B, master plan, they're shaded in green, it does allow us for some comfort and flexibility of the current enrollment that should be in place for the 2020-21 school year. So we are being mindful of those numbers, and as we transition next month with registration and selections, all of that will seek additional clarity for us and then specificity to you all of where we will go next. Please know it'll come a little faster than what we would want, just because we need to ensure that we are up and ready and give enough time to our teams that are coming in to ensure everything is in place. By sharing phase 2, option B, it does still allow for us to consider the second level of the building, as we have submitted our P-TECH application to the Texas Education Agency with that positive encouragement that does get approved, which allows some flexibility to potentially wait until we know what that looks like, and of course, again, make sound decisions based on those educational settings that we will need for a P-TECH Academy. So So again, just looking at the futuristic pieces of what we want in place for West Campus. It's a vision that continues to grow, but what in the best interest can we put in place that still gives us that high school feeling, that welcome to our classroom, and ensuring that our students are feeling that as well. This was a potential first best option. Having numbers tied to it, I've heard a couple of millions and maybe a few things here and there. However, we do want to come back with some specificity, but really give you an idea of what that really looks like and when you're walking in. I will tell you, I walked this. I went to every classroom already with the team of where this was, and that's important. So prior to just having it here, Mr. Jorge is aware of that because we've had those conversations. We looked under the bleachers, we looked and we walked in, again, just to feel ensure that the feel of what's to come is what I would want for my own children, and that's what we want. This is a good first great start for us. Maybe that was a little more than
No.
you wanted to
I'm receptive of everything that you're saying, so I thank you again for your collective efforts and giving us all the information possible so we can make a collaborative decision on how to move forward. So,
We also thank you for the opportunity to help the district.
yes, sir. Thank you. That was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Anybody else? Ms. Alvarez?
So we're going to add 10th grade next year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to be able to sufficiently, their science, since we do have the science lab already, like, are we going to be able to provide that over here, or are we going to go ahead and use our science building that's already ready for them?
The goal is, Mrs. Alderete, because it is set up for the science courses alongside comfortably fitting about 325 to 50 students within the main building to utilize the science lab as is for the biology course or for the physics and the dual enrollment that will also be put in place. So the goal is to maximize on that for the purpose and the reason of that building, which is the science. So which allows some spacing in within this building to start the school year next year. So yes, ma'am. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you, Jorge, for the presentation. I just have one question, and I guess what we need to decide is which option we're going to be going with. Is that correct? Option A or option B? Correct. Okay.
And I will tell you, I would like to see dollars sign attached to option A and option. That's just me on this end.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. So I guess then I need to hear from the board, if anyone has any more comments on looking at the two options. And let me ask Ms. Sandejo, what is your recommendation, Ms. Sandejo, on the options A or B as the phase 2 of West Campus?
I will tell you, Mrs. Frello, we would want the ultimate and the top, but we also have to be cognizant and understanding of what is in place as far as the affordability of our budget. And ensuring that the wind is on both ends, what would support us in this coming academic school year to ensure we're still providing those great spaces for our students would be option B, because it still allows us to make those adjustments, however also be mindful of the dollars that are attached to this renovation, Mrs. Prado. I will tell you just from the second page of phase 2, and this is just thinking creatively out of the box. When you look at that the career planning and collaborative area, what an opportunity to have some learning spaces for our students to come in, sit together, and it doesn't really require us to make many changes. There are many of the offices, there's conference rooms that we will be able to be very creative to use for this coming year. Of course, as we grow the enrollment, we will need some additional spacing. We will need to come back to ensure that the next phase appropriately best fits the student enrollment here at West Campus. So speaking to that, option B would be in the best interest for our I would say within the next 2 years, it would still be in a place that much of what is in option B will still be intact and very helpful to the day-to-day.
Question I have is option B would exclude the cafeteria. Is that correct? That would go in the next.
Yes, Mrs. Rattle, it will. It will exclude and only be, again, the cost for that to take place will really ratchet the dollars very, very quickly.
Well, I think then I have a question for our Budget Committee Chairman as well as for Mr. Davis. I'm glad to see him here today. First, for our Budget Committee Chairman, Mr. Rodriguez, the plan and the proposal on the budget for the West Campus, the numbers has already been identified of what the cost would be, how much the spending is. So based on B, and I don't know if you could even tell me, are we going to be okay as far as the budget for the B, option B, as far as how much we've allocated for West Campus for the opening?
As the superintendent's recommendation, option B, excluding the cafeteria, I anticipate that yes.
We will be okay.
We will be okay.
Okay. Mr. Davis, Mr. Davis, I'm so glad to see you here. A lot of board members were wondering, they've seen the name and heard the name, but they had not seen you, so I'm glad you came. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Because we have some new board members, and they need to know. Mr. Davis is our architect for South San, and Mr. Roscoe is one of our new members. I think you remember Ms. Alvarete, she was our former board member, and now we have Ms. Barba, who is our new board member. So, is it your recommendation that we go with option B, and do you feel that we can do that within our budget? Because you got a copy of the budget plan as well.
What's the budget?
From the budget committee, because you would come to our meeting. So I think that's, and back then it wasn't pleasant, I understand, we had some difficulties. But there was a budget already identified for West Campus.
I remember the numbers that were being discussed, or I remember the magnitude of the numbers that were being discussed. That's what we were just discussing here. A lot of it has to do with what enrollment do you want to plan for in this first, or in this next phase. If you want to plan for an enrollment of about 300, then option B works for you. It gets you to 300, 325, depending on how you go to the classroom. But we're talking, and I'm doing this right off the top of my head. Do you know an estimate on it yet? We're somewhere north of $2.5 million to reach that. Now, if you're without the gym, I mean, that's just classrooms, that's instructional space, that's without the gym. Although for PE, the gym could be used as it is now, and that could be something we do in the future. For competition, we have a competition facility that you can share with other high school. If that's your goal, is to be ready for 325 kids in 18 months or so, then that's the way to go. If you think you're only going to have an enrollment of about 250, then we spend less money. We have a master plan. We just build that portion of the master plan we need to build to stay ahead of your enrollment. So we could do $2 million a year for 4 years. We could do $250 million a year for 3 years. You know, we need to know what your enrollment projection is, and we can build to stay ahead of that and stay within your budget that way. If all of that is, if your prediction is only to add another 100 students next year, phase A gives you 4 classrooms, doesn't really change. That gets you a hard number off, but it's very expensive. But they're not great classrooms. They're temporary partitions. They only go up about 8 feet in a 12-foot space because there's no way to rework all that air conditioning. So we have to let the air kind of filter over the walls, basically, is the way that works. It's not ideal. There was a time, not back in the 70s, when all of our new schools were built that way. It's called open plan, you know, and it worked in the 70s, early 80s.
Because I think that's probably going to be Mr. O'Hanlon's next question is, what is going to be the cost? And I guess that's something that you will come up with to prepare for the board so we can start moving on West Campus. Now, I think you've heard Ms. Sandejo say that they have planned to be out of here by mid-March, hopefully. So, and until they move, is there anything that can be worked on before everybody is moved out?
Depends on whether it's A or B.
Are you asking for upstairs or downstairs? Just
What would be
for clarity.
option B?
Option B, downstairs.
Yeah, you bring that to that space down. Yeah. Well, that's a full renovation, so that's going to require a set of finance documents. That takes a little while to prepare. Yeah, a little permit for it too, that takes a little while. But if that's the direction you're going, you need the documents soon, immediately. I think option B is going to work best for you, and I'm not too worried about the budget because we can build to your budget. And I think stay ahead of what you're going to do. It's my guess, and you guys know as much as I don't, but my perception is we can stay ahead of your enrollments. By doing, maybe it's 4 classrooms this year, 4 classrooms year after next, 4 more classrooms the year after that. And eventually get the campus back to somewhere between 600 and 800 students. That's where it was when it was closed, and I don't see why we can't get it back to nearly the same number again.
Okay. But that's all the questions I have for you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am. So just to clarify, we're approving the plan, right? And then we're going to come back with cost estimates, and then that'll have to get approval as well, right? And then just to clarify, if I heard Jorge correctly, if let's say the board collectively decides that let's go with Plan B, you guys go and do your thing, bring us back the plans and bring us back the cost. Are we looking at March timeframe still?
Oh, this being January? We can come to your February board meeting with estimates and detailed plans to illustrate Plan B2, option B2.
Right.
And if you approve it, we can put it into production. It's not an easy job because it's a renovation. I don't want to mislead you, it's probably 4 months before we're ready to get it.
We need, in this case, we need to involve several of our consultants because mechanical and electrical needs to be within the code, and it's not easy to calculate those habits.
But renovation's more difficult than building new, and the documents it takes to bid it are also more difficult than bidding new. So we do a lot of field survey where we find out what's here. If we don't do that, we're going to surprise us during construction. I'll be standing up here like that was buried underneath the house. It's going to cost $2,000. We don't want to be there with the initial money's too valuable to you. We did it right the first time, we'll give it the best price for it.
We do have a regular board meeting on the 22nd of January.
The best prices for you.
Yeah, because this is just a special call.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. We can have the prices.
okay, so we can have that.
No, about the timeline?
About January 22nd rather than February.
Right. But then I don't know, maybe I'm not quite understanding. I think we kind of went left here quickly from talking about to prove we're going to get it done. We'll be ready to, I think you said 18 months. I just want clarity on.
So we can be out to bid in 4 months after you approve something. After this January board meeting, if you approve it and approve the budget and the pricing and everything, about 4 months to produce the job. To have it out to bid, about a month to bid it, so there's 5 months. And something less than a year to build it. Let's see what we're doing first. Let's see what the scope is. If the scope is 5 or 6 classrooms, then we're probably talking 8 months, 7 months to build it. If the scope is 10 to 13 classrooms, we're talking about a little bit longer. We also need to see what we're running into down there once we get into the systems. There's enough power coming into the building for us. There's a lot of things to be investigated. We want to do it.
I think the goal here is to get the work done before the next school year, before August. Because we have kids coming from Shepherd over here and possibly from the high school. So I think what's essentially needed is probably the ag classrooms maybe, but also the gym is also a priority because we're going to offer athletics here. So I don't know how much time that takes to put out a bid for the gym floor And possibly, I need to get a cost on the gym floor and bleachers, because they used to have bleachers. And it's my understanding, Mr. Doucette, that that's been covered up, that other wall, there's nothing behind there anymore, right?
No, ma'am. So the wall behind what's essentially now the stage was put in place. The bleachers, if I remember right, are pre-caps, so they're set in place and welded to the clips on
Yeah, they're still there. They're not there anymore, that's right.
At least on the down level that we can see. Now, what's covered up by the concrete and everything, we can't see anything past that. So the only way to know for sure is to actually get behind that wall.
We're gonna make a small hole in the wall and see what's back there.
Back there, okay.
Yeah, no, just last thing, I don't want to prolong this anymore. Obviously, there's going to be some other discussions that take place away from, the superintendent and her staff. If I recall correctly, there was already a plan in place that you guys did for West Campus to bring it back online. I mean, all that work was already done at one point, correct? That's what I was told, that was the presentation that I was given.
Well,
I have a handout still.
Yeah,
I'm just, what's making me nervous is you're going on and on and on and on, and you got up to 18 months, and school starts in August.
okay,
So-
we need to find a solution for the August, and that's important. We've shown you conceptual ideas of how to bring this thing back to high school. That's a world of difference from a set of bidding and construction documents that the general contractor takes into the building. It shows them every screw and nuts and hanger wire and doorknob. Those take a while to prepare. But if in August you need to accommodate another 100 students, then I suggest that we do option A just for those 4 classrooms up on the second floor, so we get those kids in there. That'll buy us the time we need to get down below and build some permanent things. Option A is not particularly expensive because of the type of partition we use on it. That'll get those kids in, and they'll be taken care of. That'll buy us the time we need to do real construction. The picture of this room we're sitting in, you can see that it's good time to construct. And that's the same sort of time we're going to need to be down in the basement to build things.
I'm not pleased with what he's saying, but we can approve one of these plans and then
If I may.
have other conversations, we'll have the conversations.
So I'm a little concerned about approving a Plan A or Plan B because we don't have timelines and we don't have cost estimates. I think I would rather have both of those before we say we're going to move this direction so that we can make a better informed decision in terms of meeting the needs of incoming students as well as meeting the needs of the budget.
May I speak?
Yes, please, Mr. Davis.
For your board meeting on the
22nd.
22nd, I think what I'd like to bring to you is exactly that, which is a phased approach to meeting your needs for August, and then bringing you another 100 students for the following school year. The first 100 will be up on the second floor in that area we talked about. And then after that, we'll do everything down below on the first floor, so that we have permanent construction. It takes care of both things. Get something immediate, because that can be built by August. And that can take care of your 100 kids by August. And then while they're moving in and taking care of that, we can be underneath on the building it out into a brand new high school. And doing it right, and using quality materials and quality contractors. And doing it the way it should be done, so this campus is here for another 50 years. And we can bring that timeline and the prices on all that as well. Complete schedule.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. Davis? I think that was a good idea, Mr. Roscoe, thank you. So, so instead of approving item number 3, should we just table this and bring it back on the 22nd to include the cost estimates and a plan? If it needs to be a combined A and B, then that's what it needs to be.
Well, it's going to be a plan to meet your needs and the most cost-effective way possible.
Absolutely. And of course, you've heard Ms. Indejo, her preference would be the B plan because of the PTEC that we're proposing to have this coming school year. So I think if you, Mr. Davis, and work together with Ms. Indejo and Mr. Doucette and work out what the superintendent would like to see to accommodate the kids and their programs. and what is needed and the number of students that they're anticipating, and then work out a combined. I'd like to just see one plan instead of an A or B. And the cost
It'll be
is-
one progressive plan that's anticipation needs to stay standard. And it provides time schedule for that and cost for each step of it as we go.
If we could bring that back on the 22nd, I think at that time, then we should be able to make a decision to go forward with this.
We'd like to sit down with Mr. David and Mr. Staff on Monday if possible, and we'll tackle it together.
Okay. So they help us in one else.
So, Madam President, can I move that we table item number 3 for the next regularly scheduled board meeting?
Okay. I have, thank you, Mr. Davis, Jorge, and Mr. Doucette. At this time, I have a motion by Mr. Roscoe to table item number 3 for the January 22nd board meeting. Do I hear a second?
What the second, please?
I have a second by Ms. Alderete. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next item is receive updates from staff and take appropriate board action concerning RFP number 2020-03, miscellaneous consultant services. Ms. Andel.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Prado. At this time, we do have some information Mr. Doucette will be presenting in regards to our RFP number 2020-03 on the miscellaneous consultant services.
Good evening again. So the RFP was published before the holiday break. We closed the bid process today at 10 a.m. We received 2 proposals for miscellaneous consultant services. Both of those were evaluated. Both are in line with what we were asking for in the RFP process. So I can answer any questions that you might have in regards to the RFP.
Okay. Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Doucette on this item on the RFP? No. Okay, if there are no questions, then Ms. Sendejo, what is your recommendation on this item?
I recommend to approve the 2 consultants for RFP 2020-03.
Okay, so I have a recommendation by Ms. Sendejo. Board members, do I hear a motion for item number 4?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Rodriguez. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. A second by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Okay, item number 5 is discussion and possible action to consider the reauthorization and recasting of the board's budget committee, including the appointment of a board member to fill the budget committee vacancy pursuant to board policy BDB local. Board members, I've asked to put this item on the agenda at the recommendation of Dr. Gilcrease. Dr. Gilcrease has suggested that the board committee was created during the reopening phase of the schools to oversee the budget process, to make sure that our finances were in order and that we were going to be within our budget. Since we've already opened our schools, there's not a lot more to be done. I think we need to retask the budget committee and keep it going according to Dr. Gilcrease. I think that's a good idea. We did consult with Ms. Sendejo, and I think she's in agreement that that is something that we need to have. So it's a 2-part item. The only thing that requires a motion is the tasking, and the part as far as the appointment of the vacancy, that is something according to policy, board policy, that the board has that prerogative to do that, and that the policy local. So in the summary sheet in your backup, I did ask to put the little descriptor that says the budget committee will collaborate with the superintendent on budgetary matters related to the current 2019-2020 annual budget, the development of the proposed 2020-2021 annual budget, and propose any financial adjustments as determined by the pending annual financial report, the AFR. All recommendations will be presented and approved by the Board of Trustees. So are there any questions on the tasking of the Budget Committee at this time? No questions? Okay, so if there's no questions on that, could we I'd like to ask for a motion on item number 5.
I'll make a motion, item number 5, to approve the reappointing of the Budget Committee.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Rodriguez. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Also on this, as I said, it's a two-part. So at this time, what I'd like to do is appoint Mr. Kevin Roscoe to the Budget Committee, and I'd like to ask Mr. Roscoe if he would accept his appointment to serve the vacancy that we currently have.
Yes, ma'am, it would be my honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roscoe. So the committee now for this coming 2021 appointment will be Mr. Rodriguez is our chair for the Budget Committee. I serve as a committee member, and now Mr. Roscoe will be the third committee member on the Budget Committee. Okay, thank you. I think that concludes, no, we have one more item. Item number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding the superintendent transition process. Ms. Sendejo.
Thank you, Mrs. Fowler. I do believe we have Dr. Gilcrease here and Mr. Kincaid. Welcome, Dr. Groffel, and is sharing and presenting to us this evening.
So if you remember when last time we were here and spoke to you, we gave you homework, and you thought that we forgot about it. But no, it's time to finalize some of those things that you had in your homework discussions. If you need copies of the pages specifically, Michelle has those copies of just the pages that we were talking through, and so that way you don't have to flip back and forth through your books. Dr. Gropel's again here with us, and then tonight I was thinking that this is the old guy row back here. I don't know how that worked, but we have Ronnie Kincaid. Ronnie just recently in the last few months, a year, I guess. Retired as the Service Center Director for Region 14 Service Center. He's part of our remote Casey team, and so he's going to help us as we walk through answering your questions. Mr. Kincaid has performed multiple superintendent transitions across the state, and so we're going to, now's the time too, when he's up here for you, if you have other questions that you want to pick his brain about, please feel free. So, Dr. Groper, are you up next? Or am I done? Is that what you're telling me? Go home? Okay.
I think, well, first of all, let me say thank you for your approval of Moe Casey and Associates under the general consulting RFP for the next at least single year, possibility of 3 years if I read it correctly. We appreciate that opportunity and hope that we can provide you exemplary service over the duration of that contract. As part of that, I'll get back on the subject pretty quickly here, but we need to talk about when we want to start meeting on the budget committee. Not right now, but after the meeting is over. Ronnie, do you have some things you want to just go through with them?
I will.
Okay, you'll do a better job than we do.
Thank you. Members of the board, it's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. Bring greetings from Abilene, Texas. This is where I drove in from this morning. So glad to be here. And as you serve on the board, this being the Honor Board Month, I just want to say thank you for your service to the boys and girls of South San Independent School District. It's a very thankless job, as you know, most of the time. But we appreciate what you do. As we go through talking about your superintendent transition, To me, undoubtedly, the most important job that you have as a board is to hire your next leader. Who that person is going to be. You must, it's not necessarily hard work, it is time-consuming work on behalf of the board once we get started. I hope you like each other because you will be meeting more often than normal. If you don't, then that's, I don't know. I don't know what, we'll just bring a lot of something to eat and drink and maybe maybe we can get through it pretty well. Some of the things that we need to be talking about is we have, I believe the early part of December, the job was posted. That job is it's going to run through, I believe, the end of February. Middle of February is when applications close. In between now and then, what we need, and any consultant group that helps the board with finding a superintendent, is our number one job as a consultant is identifying what you want out of the candidate, and then us trying to do our dead level best to go out there and try to find someone that meets those wants. That's our job. That's what you're going to pay us to do. Part of that is we need some questions answered, and hopefully, as Buck said, he gave you a little bit of homework to do last time, and you might just say yes, no, maybe, whatever. But as we go through, I always tell boards, we're going to get basically 3 stacks of applications. You're going to get those applicants that are setting superintendents, and they can come in here and do the job. You're going to get another set of applicants that have superintendent certification, have never been a superintendent before. They're liable to come in here and try to get a first job. It may be a principal, it may be an assistant sup trying to move up in the ranks. And then you're going to get another group, hopefully it'll be a little short group, they apply for anything, it doesn't matter if they're certified, qualified, or anything. They just apply for any job that they happen to see out there. And those are the 3 stacks that we're going to see. Depending upon some answers to our questions will depend on how large some of those stacks are. For instance, one of the questions that we asked was, you must have Texas superintendent certification. Yes or no? If your answer to that question is yes, I'm sorry, you Oklahoma people, you're not going to apply for this job. Or you Kansas people, or whatever. So that's a direction as we go through the list. And somebody's asked, well, how many applicants might South San get? That's anybody's guess. 25 to 50 would be probably a good off-the-cuff mark. So how do we, working with you all, narrow that list down to legitimate, good, possible candidates? Because there are going to be some bad ones. And hopefully that's going to be our job, is to weed out as much of the ones that are not really qualified or meet our criteria, to bring before you one of these nights and say, okay, look, we got to pick 6 or 7 of these folks that we want to interview, and here's how we came to a list that we might present to you. We, in no stretch of your imagination, are going to try to select your superintendent. We're going to identify the criteria that you give us, and then we're going to try to match people to that criteria. And we're going to bring the best matches to you and say, here they are. You may say, well, I want to see all of the applications that we get. Okay? We can make that happen. Or do you want to not waste perhaps your time with those that we know are not meeting the qualifications that you set forth? And that's be something that we would work with you as we go through the process. So, I don't know, Buck, of another way, but just say, here's the questions. Do you have any answers for some of these yet?
May I ask a question, if I may?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Gropel, because we have our superintendent, our interim superintendent will be eligible to apply. So is it okay for her to be here during this question and answer, or should we excuse her and let her go have dinner? Or, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's fine. I think it's her comfort level and y'all's comfort level. We're not really going to have a lot of different, the conversations and the answers that you're going to talk about We're out here.
Yeah, it's open session.
You can't exclude her from an open meeting. We can have a conversation in closed meeting and exclude her in terms of, it's an open meeting.
Okay.
And it's on the internet, so.
That's fine, I'm just curious.
Madam President, I don't really think that it needs to be closed at this point in time. Now, I will say this, from every meeting here on, talking about the superintendent transition process, it will be in closed session. But you got one free one right here that's in open session. However you look at that, good or bad. So think about those questions. If the applicant must have superintendent certification, that was question number one. Yes or no? Will you entertain people from out of state? If the answer to that question is yes, then we can make a check. Or if you want to strictly say, we've got to have somebody that understands Texas public school, Texas public school law, and we want to go with someone that's got Texas certification. That's up to y'all. That's one of those decisions that you get to make. And then we will take that information and go forth and conquer. So,
Would it be valuable for us to turn in all of our answers, have you compile them, and then have a follow-up discussion so that we don't accidentally taint each other's thoughts and feelings, because we may have some disagreements on small points that don't matter in the big picture when we have them all together?
Madam President, this is your show.
Yeah,
I think that would be
No,
appropriate.
I think so too, but I think, and Dr. Gilchrist, if I'm wrong, please tell me, I think that was the reason why, when we had the presentation, and I'm guilty, that's why we had homework, was to get this done before today, I think.
Well, but it didn't have to be completed before today. Today was really the day we came back and reminded you that you had homework, and so there's no late penalty for this. You don't get zero if you don't turn it in. So yeah, my recommendation would actually be, yes, that you guys, you fill those out and then give them to us. You don't have to do that tonight. If you want to, you can give them to Michelle. She'll give them to us. But as you look through these questions, and you start going back to ponder them, what we really want is if you have questions about the questions tonight, so that there's clarification before you do your filling out.
Okay, well, I have a question. I was just looking at the first criteria. The first question is, must have Texas superintendent certification. So that doesn't mean they can't have out-of-state certification.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so they can have any certification, it doesn't mean it's just Texas certification.
And if they have out-of-state, they can get in-state.
Yeah, I mean, there are different avenues for someone out of state to get a Texas certificate. So, no problem. Probably one of the questions that we would send a prospective applicant, but do you have Texas superintendent certification, or can you get Texas superintendent certification? That would be our question that we would put out to the individual.
Okay.
They're going to be required to get Texas certification.
Yeah.
If that's what the board wants.
Right, that's what the board wants, right.
So,
And then the next one is must have superintendent experience. I guess my question is it, does it specify how much experience? It's just, somebody could have been in a position a year and that qualifies them as experience?
yes, ma'am.
So any experience as long as they've been a superintendent.
And if you'll go back to my stack analogy, that if the answer to that question is yes, then this stack over here that has current setting superintendents, that may be a little smaller. If you say no, you don't have to have Texas superintendent experience, then you're going to have a middle stack here that's pretty you know, every principal that could apply, every assistant superintendent could apply. That's just the nature. But if this board thinks that we have to have an experienced superintendent leading us, then that's a consideration. You will have an opportunity during the process, especially during the interview process, if you happen to pick an applicant that has 1 year experience versus that applicant that has 10 years experience. In the interview process, you will discern which one of those is the best applicant.
And then, if I may, you also, the question about have experience as a building principal, but it doesn't say at what level, secondary, primary, high school. Now, on the second page, though, the question, it does ask if there's teaching experience at the secondary or elementary, and then it just says experience as a principal. So it can be a principal at a high school, at an elementary, or a middle school. It's not just as long as it had a principal experience.
Yes, ma'am. I mean,
Yes.
Well, really, what I think we would be, you know, talking to the board about is, you know, as long as we can ascertain that the applicant has had a leadership position in some school, whether it be an elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school, whatever. Have they led people? Have they demonstrated success leading people? That's what we're looking for. When you go to look for this individual, and your staff were to finally get wind that, you know, our board hired a superintendent that has never been a teacher or never been a principal, or never been something, that gives a little less credence to that individual from the get-go.
The restricting to, what happens in the education business is people tend to get tracked into primary, secondary school, that you end up being an elementary principal, and a lot of people stay there. They go into elementary supervision and that kind of stuff with the division. When you get to the superintendent level, it comes back. So that what you're looking for is not necessarily the relevant campus, but the leadership skills. So I think trying to differentiate between primary and secondary would be a mistake in terms of that, because let's just see what they got. No prejudging with respect to my recommendation. That neither one of them prepare you for being a superintendent, I can guarantee you that.
I think there's another issue here that the principal question is answering, which is really, have you been an instructional leader? And so there may be people that have never had that specific title, but they do have instructional leadership and proven instructional, let me rephrase that better, proven instructional leadership. Because in today's world, when I started my superintendency, honestly, carrying the keys and checking for dust and making sure the trash was taken out and the buses were running were the extent of the job. When I finished it, it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with what went on in the classroom. And so I think what you're really asking with this question is do you have proven instructional leadership? Can you show us that you know what it takes for student success in the classroom? Any other questions about questions?
There's a question about experience as central office administrator. So I guess if they have to have, superintendent has to have a certificate, superintendent certification. So you can't have somebody in the central office as an administrator unless they have that certification to become superintendent, right?
They can be an administrator at the district administration office and not have superintendent certification.
But they can't serve in the capacity of a superintendent.
You have to be certified as a superintendent.
You have to be certified.
Or get the waiver through the state.
Yeah.
And there's some options to do that.
Yeah.
They can get a temporary permit for up to 5 years, but in the end, you have to have certification.
But the commissioner does have the authority to waive that.
Right.
if he so chooses, or she so chooses.
I would not ask.
So, again, no, these questions are to help you think a little bit about the process, but it also helps us as we go about trying to narrow down the field of candidates. And to me, that kind of segued into the kind of the profile, and I don't know if you're calling it a profile or if you're calling it a selection criteria. Same thing, those words. What are you looking for as a board? And then I ask you as the board, okay, do you want any help? Do you want any help from anybody, or are you going to do this yourself? Okay, that's not to be answered out loud, that's just to be thinking. Okay, do you need community input? Do you need staff input? Do you need parental input? What do we need as a board to help us come up with a criteria, a set of characteristics that we're looking for? And that's what this profile will do for you. It will give the board an opportunity to fill out the profile. It'll give anyone in the district the authority to fill out the profile. Usually how this works is we would put a link on your website. A community member could go to your website, click on that, superintendent profile, fill it out, and electronically it gets to us. If you want it to get to you, let's say that you wanted to see the answer to the profile as they were being filled out. Electronically, we can make that happen, where you can see exactly what someone has filled out. You can't tell who it was, not sure, but you can tell how those people filled it out. And then it will separate it into groups. We'll have a group of here's what the community said about these questions. Here's what the staff said about these questions. Here's what parents said about the question. And then over here, last but surely not least, here's what the board said about these. Then we would lump those groups together, and hopefully there'd be some congruency. That what you are looking at as a board member, your community is looking for the same type of thing. Hopefully, that's what we hope to see. Everyone knows at the end of the day, the people sitting in this room gets to choose the superintendent. Everybody knows that. I think, this is Ronnie Kincaid's personal opinion, why wouldn't you get as many peppers as you could in the process?
Oh, I agree.
But I think the three of us would agree that, the more cooks in this kitchen, perhaps the better. Once we get the profile, and that would take us, I don't know, we would pick a time. We're going to leave the profile up 2 weeks or 3 weeks for people to fill it out. We would advertise, however you all advertise that things for parents and community members to look at on your website. We'd get that out, make sure they went to do it, and then with your approval or disapproval, whichever way you wanted to go, do we want to have face-to-face meetings with the staff, face-to-face meeting with the community? And that's a question. You can do it one way or the other. You can do the electronic profile, or basically you can do the same thing face-to-face, or you can do kind of a combination of both of those. And that would be up for the board to give us direction. If we need to, a couple of days come up and, okay, we're going to be at this place for this long. Any staff member that wanted to come up, talk to us about what the characteristics of the new superintendent should be, and then perhaps hang around for an evening session to where we invited our patrons, our community members, and parents to come up. Again, it can be an either or it can be both. And that would be something that we would want a direction from. I definitely think you're going to get more response from a from the technology side. We put that profile out for people to do that. Now, will you get the same person that's disgruntled with the board answering it 50 times? You might have that. And I always tell boards this, some of the last couple of questions we ask is, what are things about the district that are going to be troublesome? Our skin's going to have to be a little thick because every once in a while as boards, we get run over a little bit. But as long as we can look ourselves in the mirror, we're doing what's right for boys and girls, so big. Well, we can't worry about what somebody else thinks about us. But it will happen. You will read some things that say, we have the dumbest board in America, or whatever. So we just want to make sure that you're seeing that information. And then what I personally think, and I think my two colleagues would say also, once that individual is employed, wouldn't that be a great document for them to look at, to just kind of say, here is what the staff in our community wanted to see in the new leader. I think it would be a great tool for them to have. And then we have that, once that profile is developed, then that's what we're trying to match. We're trying to match individuals that meet that profile to the very best of their ability. And those are the candidates, hopefully, we get to bring to you. So, again, it's not rocket science, but it is very, very important as we go through this process.
I'd like to, if I could, board members, let's get these filled out and turn it to Michelle as soon as possible. No later than Monday. I know tomorrow's Friday, but that gives you the weekend to fill them out. If we could turn them into Michelle, so that then she can provide it over to Dr. Gilcrease and Mr. Vogel and Mr. Kincaid. I have a question on the calendar, Dr. Vogel, that was presented. I think it's a good calendar. I think, I like the timeline. We should be able to select the loan finalists by March. So I think it's going to move quickly. So I think it's a good calendar. Do we need to approve any of this tonight? Is there any action that we have to take? Or are we just going to move on with the plan?
No,
Okay.
this is the calendar that we're going to follow and move forward. Yeah, I think the last few questions that we need from y'all by Monday is, if you want us to hold community forums and forums with the staff, we need to know that pretty quickly so we can get them on the schedule.
Okay.
So it fits within the calendar before the job closes in the middle of February. And so, like Ronnie said, we'll do it either way. But this is one of those things where I think you need as much input as you can get from across the community.
Oh, I agree. I think so.
This gives them an opportunity to have.
Yes, Ms. Alden.
On those committees and what we're talking about right now, I agree completely, 100%. In fact, I think we should do both, electronically and inviting them in. But is that something that we should decide tonight? Like, okay, let's get these committees going, since, that's very easy to answer. With their recommendation that they've given us.
I'm kind of reading the answer is yes, that you want both from from where we're standing, everybody's shaking their heads, so we're already sitting here saying that we're going to do both. And so we'll get with Michelle and get those scheduled, and get advertised. We'll get Ms. Collier to help us advertise that throughout the district, and then set up both of those things. But we kind of need to have, so on Monday, when we get your answers, Tuesday, after we have your answers back, then that'll help us make the next steps to set up the electronic deal, and then we'll set up those meetings with staffs. And what we'll probably ask them to do is, we'll try to lump groups of staffs together so that we won't hit every campus, but we'll say we'll be here at this time and here at this time, and let people, and then have at least one, probably two evening opportunities for parents and community members to come.
And you'll provide that schedule to us so that if you want to attend, you can attend those meetings.
Madam President, we also, this profile that we put out, it will be in English and in Spanish.
Okay.
Now, hopefully the interpretation into Spanish will be okay.
We'll have people check.
But we'll have that also.
Yes,
I'd like to make sure that when we do hit the employees and what the certain times you're gonna be there, that, you know, they're on a time schedule. There's times where they can get there, and there's times that we wanna make sure that we hear from all of our employees and not just certain pieces of our employees. So that's very important, at least to myself. I don't know how everybody else feels, but.
But you're absolutely, yeah, we'll set it up so that everybody has a chance to come, you know, during their times when they can get there.
Thank you.
But y'all just, again, just experience, y'all don't need to come to those meetings. Y'all are getting us firsthand. Once a board member steps inside of one of those meetings, it's different.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
different. So I just,
You're
I
right.
throw that out there, not saying, definitely I'm not saying you can't come. But I'm just saying, think about it.
You're
Think about it.
exactly right.
Are we stifling what we might hear?
That's right, exactly. You're exactly right. Okay, any other questions for the team up here on the search? Okay, we know what we have to do. Okay, because we don't want to get an F on grade.
Homework, for real this time.
Right. Dr. Gropel, Dr. Gilchrist, you had mentioned it's been posted already? Are we posting already for this position?
It'll be everywhere tomorrow. It's been posted in a few places. We've sent it out to some people, but tomorrow it will be, the process, the one that you have a copy of will be plastered.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
And I'll say this, we've already received inquiries
Oh, okay.
from people. So, yeah, there's people that have already called and asked questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, board members, next item is, of course, closed session. So at this time, the board will go into closed session pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.0821. Number 1 is discussion concerning personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, and the time is 7:48. The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 9:10 p.m. The first item on the agenda is discussion and possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding the resignation of Director of Advanced Academics. Board members, do I hear a motion for this item?
Yes, Madam President, I move to approve and accept the resignation.
I have a motion by Mr. Rodriguez. Do I hear a second? A second by Ms. Alderete. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Rodriguez. Do I hear a second? Second by Ms. Barba. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 9:11.